Okay, so this is a question from Wild Rain, and Wild Rain is asking about. They're commenting on a video that I made a while back. It's called like 5 different ways to back up our horses multiple ways. And Wild Rain is saying that their horse will only back up off the feel of the halter, which is one of the ways that we teach, but that they're not able to get their horse to back up any other way. Any suggestions, any tips? So yeah, I got a few. But first I want to talk about like why we actually back our horses up. So I think it's important to really understand why we do what we do. I feel like in horsemanship, there's a lot of things that we just kind of do because people say it's good for the horse and do it. And a lot of times it's true. But it's like, why do we do this, right? So when we back a horse up, a couple things. One, it is good physically for a horse to know how to back up, right? It's likely that when you're riding, you might want to back your horse up, even if you're not showing a horse. Maybe you're not showing a class where you have to demonstrate the back up. But if you're a trail rider and maybe you are walking through a thicket or through something and it's a little thicker than you anticipated, or you walk in through some brush and maybe there's an old fence line you didn't see that was kind of torn down, and you find yourself about to step over through some wire, you want to be able to back up out of that situation, keep you and your horse safe, right? Calmly and quietly, without your horse spinning around or acting silly. So that's one practical reason, right? It's just, it's a good tool to have to be able to maneuver out of different situations when you need to. The other reason for backing up, and I think it's just as important, is attentiveness. And so horses generally like to go forward. And if you think about it, a horse spooks, what do? They take off, they bolt. Or the horse, gets into a fight with another horse, they charge forward at that horse, right? Horses use going forward to find food, right? To find water. Like forward is a default mode for a horse. You never see a horse trotting around a pasture backwards, right? They're always going forward. If you did, you might want to get that checked out. And so what we do is we use backing up as what we call a pattern interrupt. And instinctively, sometimes under pressure, when a horse is worried, they just want to go forward. They think forward is the answer. Like if I just run fast enough, push through, or go by quick enough, then everything will be okay. And for the most part, like in nature, in the wild for a horse, that's true. That's why God made them so reactive, so instinctive. They've got reflexes faster than even a cat, so that they can just run forward and get away from the lion, the tiger, or the bear. But when we're riding our horses, like that's the worst thing that could happen, right? A horse that's taken off. I don't know if you've ever been on a runaway horse before. Oh man. In fact, I've been on a runaway wagon before. Not fun. One of the scariest things in my life. Big old huge Percheron just taking off. And so going back to attentiveness, we use the backing up to get our horse's attention as a pattern interrupt to break that instinctive response of just going forward, driving forward, or running away. And so when we back a horse up, not only are we physically saying don't go forward, but when I back my horse up at a distance like this, what I'm doing is positioning my horse so that I'm in front of their attention's on me. Now, I've done a lot of this work with Slate. You can tell he's learned how to really zero in on me. But let's say he looked over there or looked off there, or there was another horse that he was whinnying out to, then I would just back him up until his attention came back on me. And then I take the pressure away to let him know that he finds his peace, his rest, his relaxation on me. So I think it's important to understand why we do what we do. But to go to Wild Rain's question specifically, Wild Rain is asking, how do I get my horse to back up? From what I'm understanding, if I understand correctly, your horse will back up like most horses do. They will back up from underneath the clip off of the halter pressure. So what that means is, you're okay, bud, is you can put pressure here and he'll back up. if you're wanting to teach your horse how to back up at a distance, it requires being clear, being loud, and adding what we call adequate pressure. Now, Slate's not been the type of horse really that's needed what we call adequate pressure. And let me explain what adequate pressure is, okay? For most horses, I'd say it's almost 50-50. For a lot of horses, we use what's called gradual pressure. So what that looks like is I might wave my hand lightly, and if my horse isn't moving from that, I'll get bigger and then bigger, and when they move, I release the pressure. So we kind of escalate the pressure gradually. You can see how light and sensitive he is. He responds to that. You have some horses, and Slate is not this horse, so I'm not going to do it with him. It would be a disservice to him. But you have some horses, more draftier, cold-blooded horses, lazy horses, dull horses, that you can shake all day till the cows come home and there's just, no big deal. So for a horse like that, you need to, instead of being gradual, because if you use gradual, it's kind of like putting a frog in boiling water and slowly turning it up, that horse will just stay there. And you'll actually end up desensitizing your horse. You'll graduate from, let's say, a pressure of 1 to a pressure of 10, and that horse is just standing there while you're at a pressure of 10. And then if you end up stopping, they just learn to become even more desensitized, okay? So what I want to do is I want to make an educated guess. What pressure would it take to get this big, dull, drafty horse to back up and move away? So what that might look like is I might say, you know what? I probably need a pressure of 8. And so instead of starting light and then graduating, I would, boom, get in there with a big amount of pressure. And of course, the moment that horse gave me, I mean, even if they just leaned back, I'd take the pressure away immediately in order to let my horse know that they made a good decision, right? By backing away from the pressure versus just standing there. And a lot of people ask for way too much too soon. Like, again, I might just start with getting my horse to lean back, maybe taking a half step. And I might get that really consistent to where now at a pressure of 7 or 8, I can get it. But if I get it 10 out of 10 times, then maybe the next time I might ask at a pressure of 5 or 6. And then I might, once that's 10 out of 10 times, I can just go in at a 5 or 6. Then I might actually work my way down to 2 or 3, right? So I'm going to slowly start from big pressure, the adequate pressure, the pressure that my horse needs to understand to move away from the pressure, and then work my way down to lesser pressure over time. What does that look like? It can be waving your rope. It can be using your steady stick, even tapping them on their forearm, right? If I have a horse who's really pushy and like coming after me, I'll even tap them on their muzzle, on the nose, on that soft cartilage. I'll give them a tap and say, hey, back up, get out of my space. Give me some room. You can't come over the top of me. But the idea is you have to use enough pressure that you get the response you're looking for. And the moment you get anything in that response, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be running backwards, but just, good boy, what a pony. Just a little bit of understanding that, oh, I need to move away from this pressure. We're going to immediately release the pressure. One thing I find a lot of people will say, it feels icky having to use that amount of pressure on my horse. And I get it. Nobody wants to use a lot of pressure on our horses. But I also want you to be very realistic and think about like the way that horses operate, because you can see 2 horses in the pasture, they're playing around and they might double barrel another horse in the rib cage and they'll just shake it off and continue playing around. So they can take a lot of pressure. But when we are applying a lot of pressure to our horse, it comes nowhere near to the amount of pressure that another horse would use on another horse. The other thing I'll say, though, is when you apply that amount of pressure, if you have to use a lot of pressure, be sure to release the moment your horse gives. Because in my opinion, if your horse is giving and you're not releasing, that's excessive, it's unfair, and it's not fair to your horse. But if when your horse, step on up, bud. If when your horse is giving, no matter how little the effort is, if you release that pressure, you can always build on that and get your horse to show you better understanding. So what I would recommend is getting in there with clarity, giving your horse the amount of pressure that they need to understand what you're asking them to do, and being attentive to the effort they give you so you can immediately release the pressure. And once you can get a consistent response, then start dialing down the pressure that you're using so that you're not having to have a heavy hand in the way that you're communicating to your particular horse.